Welcome back to W3, Women Winning Worldwide, where we help women create a better life while saving time during the process. While celebrating everything that women are at their core and their greatest contributions, connecting you to them eliminates the time for you to have to figure it out on your own. These winning women will teach you how to have the life that you want in a fraction of the time. Now let's win. Today, we want to talk about how to have the right mindset for the challenges that we face and what it looks like to keep the faith on the way to achieving our goals. Now, I know we're in the new year, new me, new mindset, new goals. But what I found leading up to the new year, I needed to take a break. My mind needed a rest. And so outside of just reading something or listening to something, especially on YouTube or a podcast where I listen to a lot of motivational stuff, I like to surround myself with what I call soul friends that can really get my mind and my faith back on track. You know, when we're trying to achieve certain goals, a lot of times we can feel like we're on our own and we're just running. But those friends that's pouring into us can really bring us back in, keep us level-headed, grounded per se. So if you need more soul friends in 2023, that's what I say look for. The ones that will send you a message, to send you a scripture, or a gospel song, or even pray for you. I have friends that will literally sit on the phone and pray for me sometimes. And that's what really can get my mind right and my faith back in a space where it needs to be to achieve the goals in 2023. A company that I'm really excited about sharing with you guys is Collins & Company, who are essentially a group of collaborators by trade. Collins & Company is a woman-owned and led public relations, marketing, and creative agency with experience inspiring audiences all over the world. They specialize in compelling storytelling, striking, creative, and smart branding. Collins & Company is committed to building a happy, healthy, and collaborative remote environment for their employees. Quinn Collins is the founder and principal of Collins & Company, and she founded this in 2012 with a vision of creating an autonomous remote work culture that cultivates productivity and personal flexibility. Now, I love this company because they promote inclusiveness and expansion, and that's what W3 is all about. We are an inclusive membership community, and we promote connecting, collaborating with, and celebrating the achievements of women. If you want to know more about Collins & Company, go to collins-company.com. Let's talk about our wins for the week. The first one, I got out of the house to get some work done. My workspace is literally in the comfort of my bedroom, and sometimes I can get distracted by my husband watching TV, my kids coming in the room even though the door is closed. So I went to my local Panera so I could get some things done on my to-do list for my businesses. And so this was a video that I posted the other day where I talked about how this is hard. This is hard work, starting something new, something different, where it's out of your comfort zone, but you gotta do it anyway. And I know that when God is calling you to do something, you can't keep running. So for all of you that are going after new goals, new dreams in 2023, just know that you just have to keep going, even though it may be hard. And just continue to be your authentic self, because that's who you need to be to win. Today we're wearing earrings from Fashion Spa House, a specialty retail that creates and curates products for stylish self-care enthusiasts. They are located in Owens Mills, Maryland and BWI Airport. Now, I remember seeing them as a kiosk in a terminal, but now they have a huge location right outside of the main food court by Southwest Airlines. You can follow them at Fashion Spa House on Instagram to see more of their collection. One of the things that W3 will always do is feature women-owned brands. So if you want to be featured on the Women Winning Worldwide podcast, send us a direct message on Instagram at W3 Community. Syreeta Hubbard is a Baltimore media sports analyst. Known by many as the NFL Chick, Hubbard, along with Glenn Clark, currently hosts Baltimore Postgame Uncensored on 105.7 The Fan and the Talia Bauer Show on Pressbox Online. Hubbard started her career at Fox 1370 with Rob Long, eventually moving to production work with WBAL Radio and the Baltimore Ravens. A Baltimore native, Hubbard grew up spending summers at Memorial Stadium cheering on the Orioles. She then adopted the Ravens upon their arrival in 1996. Now, I had to wear the old school LaMarvelous Jackson sweatshirt that she designed herself, and I can't wait for you guys to hear from her today. Hey girl, hey! It's so good to see
Happy
you!
New Year!
Oh my gosh! Look, we've been knowing each other. We go way back.
Over
We've been
25 years.
Right. So it's so exciting for you to be on the Women Winning Worldwide podcast for everyone, as we are highlighting women like you that's breaking barriers in the sports industry. It was so appropriate for us to be here at the Ravens Stadium. You know, I had to wear the old school LaMarvelous Jackson sweatshirt that she designed herself. So I can't wait to get into this conversation, but if you can kind of tell people a little about what you do here, or you know what you used to do here, how you got into all this, that would be great.
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Girl.
But this brings back a lot of memories. I was an employee here. I started as an intern here in 2007, and I became an employee here in 2008. And so my career has grown, and now I do the post game for Ravens games here on 105.7 The Fan. And so, you know, I still obviously am entrenched with the Ravens because I go to the facility and we talk to the coaches, we talk to the players, we get to watch some of the practice. So while I'm not physically at M&T Bank Stadium, I'm still very involved in the Ravens in other ways. So it's good to be back to some old stuff again.
Right.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. I mean, but how appropriate. We wanted to get the feel of the NFL chick. So I can't wait to have this conversation. We have a lot of things that we want to talk about to help those other women that want to get into this industry. So I can't wait. So let's go ahead.
Let's go.
All right. So we are here with Syreeta Hubbard, or the NFL Chick, and we get to dive in and just pick her brain today on how she actually got into this space. You know, I've been knowing Syreeta for, like I said, quite some time now, and for as long as I can remember, you have talked sports, you know, Orioles, Ravens, like you are that sports girl, and I guess that's why your name is the NFL Chick today. But a lot of women also want to get into this space, and so you know that this is all about helping more women save time, live better. Living better for them could be doing this could be their dream career. And so we just want to ask you some questions today on how you actually got involved with this and how you went from your career before. Like you were saying, you used to be at the stadium but not so much anymore. But the first thing is, how did you get started as a sports analyst?
It's been a long road, but I started with a blog. It's funny because Fox Sports used to have a blog community, and this is before blogs even became big. And they allowed people to, you know, write about whatever they chose to write about. So I decided to write about football, and that's where I created the name, the NFL Chick, because that was the name of the blog, right? Okay. And so then they would have contests, and I used to be really competitive about these blog contests. So, you know, I didn't place one time, and I was like, you know what, I don't need this community. I'm going to make my own blog site. So I learned, you know, at the time, I think Google used to have an engine, and it was like blogspot.com. So I used that to create my own lane in my own website, and eventually, you know, it grew. And at the same time, I went to broadcasting school. So when I finished at broadcasting school, I started interning, and I interned at the local sports station here in Baltimore, and then I eventually interned with the Ravens. And when I got the next year after I interned, I got a part-time job with the Ravens. And I'll never forget something that my boss at the time at the Ravens told me, which was, you know, document your experiences here. You never know when you're going to need it. and, just document the sports, but also the personal. And so at that point, I created a larger platform with NFL Chick. And that was in 2008, the year that I actually started working with the Ravens. So that kind of catapulted me because it allowed me to just have a voice.
Yeah.
And then I just started tagging people. I would get on these social media sites and start posting my articles and started tagging people, and eventually someone read it and they asked me to come on to their radio show. So that was how my radio show experience started. But it really was it's a long path, right? I mean, I did a lot of production work. I did a lot of interning, and mind you, at this point I'm a mother. My son is probably like 7 or 8 years old, and I'm starting a new path.
Yeah.
So while it wasn't easy, particularly because I'm a young mother at that time, it was necessary because it was something that I was really passionate about, and I just wanted to do more of it. And thankfully, again, being persistent and just being consistent allowed me to have my voice heard by someone bigger, and they gave me an opportunity, and it just grew from there.
And I'm glad you talk about having the voice, because a lot of times we, on the outside looking in, we would think that it is difficult for a woman to have a voice in that space. So do you feel like it's been difficult to find spaces that was welcoming to your voice as you started getting to, football per se?
Absolutely, because we have to remember, you and I, while as good as we look, we might not be as young as we would like to be, So when we started, the internet didn't come until we were adults. So we really didn't have a voice that could reach outside of a certain radius, right? You really had to have TV or radio to be, someone that people would recognize. Social media has allowed people to have those voices, and it's expanded so much over time. Twitter has Spaces. It's a thing called Spaces. It's a lot like they took the platform of what, I cannot remember this name of this other platform, but they took the platform of another site and then they just integrated it into theirs, where people can have conversations. And they can talk about whatever topic they choose. So now you're seeing more women creating their own spaces. You're seeing women doing blogs. You're seeing women doing podcasts. You're seeing women doing YouTube channels. All of these things I did not have access to. So I had to do it a little bit hard, a harder path, which then led to it being like, well, what is it that you really know? Who wrote that stuff for you? All these things. But when you're able to see people and you hear these people speak in live time, it allows you to understand that they are knowledgeable and they do know, football or whatever sport that they decide to know, to learn. So that's the part that I think now women have the advantage of, is that they have these outlets that they can get their voice heard at a much larger scale than I was able to grow up.
Right. I think sometimes when we hear people on radio, we think they're just jumping on, having a conversation. But a lot of preparation and research goes into this that we don't see from the back end. We just hear you. We just hear you, what it seems like you're just analyzing the game or just giving your opinion per se. But you do a lot of research. It takes some time for you to be so effective with your listeners as well, right? So can you kind of talk about some of the research that goes into, like, what do you do to prepare when you are going on, let's say, 105.7 The Fan, which is something I hear all the time because my husband is a sports talk radio guy. So what type of research goes into all of that?
I mean, first you got to watch the games, right? And look, football in the NFL, they only have 17 regular season games, thankfully, and then playoffs and preseason, but they don't have that many games. But let's say you're doing baseball. Well, you got to watch, 180 games, right? But you have to watch the games, and then you have to know the statistics of what you saw in that game, right? And then you have to know how to tell the story, because I think that people think that it's just easy to go on a radio show and say, so what happened in today's game is J.K. Dobbins had 21 carries for 125 yards. Yeah, that's nice, but then what else happened? Like,
Right.
there were times that maybe he was met at the line of scrimmage and didn't get any yards. It's times where, there's some pass protection or some run protection that broke down. Like, you have to tell the story of what you saw. And so statistics is not enough. You can read it. That doesn't mean that you would understand what you're saying, what you're seeing, but you could read that aloud and it's still informative, right? But it's about what in the information makes that context important. And that's the part that people fail to realize. So it really does come with a lot of preparation. Also, too, you have to make sure that you have the right information, like sound bites and, sounds of the game, because that also tells a story that ties into the story that you're trying to tell. So it really is like a storyboard. Putting a show together is like a storyboard, especially post game. It's definitely like a storyboard. We have to tell it that way. And then it allows people to understand where we're coming from on how we see the game, which is, debatable because everybody sees things differently. Yeah. But at least, you can be able to explain how you see it, and then you allow the storyboard to tell the story for you.
So listening to Syreeta, you can tell she knows her stuff, right? I watch football games with my husband all the time, and I can just see the person with the ball, and like I'm looking at that little part of the play, but I can't see when he sees a holding. I can't see when he sees anything else. I can't see the whole thing,
right?
Because I'm just not, I guess, to all of that either. I'm just watching to see who's going to score, right? But for you to even know what to look at and being able to analyze everything, like what you were just talking about, I'm sitting here like, I would never even know what was happening on the field with all of these players. But you have really been able to dive in and tell the story in such a way where people want to listen to you.
Yeah, and look, I learned a lot from my dad. My dad actually was a big football and baseball player here in Baltimore. And my dad played it's called the Big 12 now, but back in the day, in his day, it was called the Big 8. And he even was on the practice squad for the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, my dad was in the NFL at one point. So, I am the oldest. And, eventually he got boys, right? But at the end of the day, I'm the girl. And so, I had to watch a lot of football with him. I had to watch a lot of baseball with him. Sports was entrenched in me at a very early age because my father, and not even just my dad, my mom is big into sports as well. My grandparents, I grew up with a grandmother that would listen to Oriole games on the radio as opposed to watching it on TV. So it's something that I kind of was born into. And then, but when I was old enough to understand what was going on is really when I started getting into it. And also having a team to root for is a big part, because you and I were about 4 years old when the Colts left. I had no connection to that team. And so while I did start liking football before the Ravens came in 96, now you have something to connect to. And I think having that connection with, having a team to root for in your own backyard gives you a different perspective. And it made me want to learn about it a little bit more, because at that time I was a big baseball girl. But also I grew up at Memorial Stadium. I spent summers there. I loved baseball because I had a team to root for, and I spent a lot of time in doing so, rooting for that team. So that's kind of how I got to where I am now. And it's helped. My dad has been a big part of like helping me understand football and getting where I am now. And
if you follow Syreeta on the NFL Chick, and she's on Twitter as well, guys, a lot. But you can see that this is a family affair with you. Your family travels. They do, like, I see you and your mom and your dad, like, and your son, and it is a family thing, and it has to be fun.
It is. It's a really good time. We pick at least one away game every year that we go to. And this year we went to New Orleans for the game. And so, I mean, everybody loves New Orleans. So, you had to do that. And it was such a good time. The year before we went to Denver. And so, that I appreciate that so much because, obviously I'm spending time with my family. And that's the most important thing. But then being able to spend time with your family and do, you all enjoy the same thing. I mean, that's the blessing of it all. So it's always a good time. We always have fun.
Right. Now, when we think about the career itself and the space itself, you're around a lot of men.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yes.
Do you ever feel like you need to do something to, I guess, have some self-care for yourself, or switching it off at times where you say, you know what, I don't want to talk sports right now? When you're in your personal life, do you kind of switch it off? Do you say, this is personal time, that's my business or career time, I need to switch this off? Because a lot of times when people are taking their work home, it becomes too much.
Yeah.
Right? And so how do you separate that? How do you have a balance, per se, in your personal life?
I think my friends and my family know that, when I want to talk about football, I will. Right? They don't really bring it up unless I bring it up, because I talk about it so much. People that don't really know me or know me casually don't know that. So if they see me somewhere in public and they say, hey, I really like your stuff, then want to start talking football, they think that that's something that you always want to do, and it's not, obviously. But at the very least, the people that I'm close to know that that's something that I'm not talking about it unless I want to talk about it, because sometimes you do have burnout. Sometimes you talk about things so much that you just need a break.
Right.
So luckily, I have some other things that I'm passionate about, and it allows me to dive into those things. But the people that come up to you and say, oh, I listen to you all the time, sometimes you just, you don't want to be rude. Right. Now, there's times where if I'm really not in the mood, I would just be like, hey, I don't want to talk about it. Or, I'll come up with something, but I'm never rude about it. Sometimes you do have to cross a line because it's necessary, especially for your self-care. If you're not in the mood to talk, don't do it. But ultimately, I really try to be as nice as I can in those regards, because these are people that listen to you. Right. And they're people that support you. And so you don't want to be rude. And sometimes you got to bite the bullet.
So when you turn it off, how do you decompress? When you're talking sports all day, people are asking you to be on their show. People are wanting to ask you personal questions. Yeah. How do you decompress? What does Syreeta do?
It's really not hard for me. It's like a light switch. Okay, I don't want to talk about it. I mean, it literally is, boom, I don't want to talk about it anymore. And I will not talk about it anymore. And that's kind of how it goes. I find the people that I love to be very good decompressors, and it allows me to have a space where I can speak about the things that I want to talk about, And so that's very helpful. But if I don't want to do something anymore, I'm not going to do it. And so I do not need a period of decompression.
Okay,
It is very much so boom, boom, bop.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people need to learn how to do that.
Yes.
I think as you get older, I tell people now that I'm in my 40s,
yes,
it is so different. I know how to say no more, so that I can say yes more to myself.
Yep.
And we have to do that, because when you're a woman winning, per se, in business, career, and even if you're a stay-at-home mom, you're working so much, but you have to say yes to you at times, because if you're not well, you can't be well for anybody else.
Absolutely.
So we're in the new year.
Yes.
As we think and reflect on 2022, what would you say has been one of your greatest wins last year?
So this was 2022 was the first year that I got, well, it's not the first year. It was a year in which I reconnected with 105.7 The Fan. So back in 2014, I did an hour show on Sundays, but it was 7 a.m. It was super early. But ironically, it was myself and my co-host. His name was Ken Zales. I love you, KZ, if you ever see this. But ironically, it was 7 a.m., but we were getting calls at 7 a.m. People were calling the show, and it was only an hour, but we had to tell people, hey, the show is over. We can't talk anymore, because you only get a certain amount of time to talk. So, fast forward to 2022, I was offered the opportunity, myself and my co-host Glenn Clark, for having a new show on 105.7 The Fan. Their program director reached out to us because we were doing post-game at Pressbox, which is an online internet company for sports. And they also do publications like print press. but they don't have like a radio station. They would outsource that information. So the program director at 1057 came to us and asked us, were we interested in doing a Sunday show? Because they wanted to switch some things up. And we said, yes, we'll do it. And so obviously it turned out good enough that they asked us to do post game, which I don't think people realize, but that's really a big deal. I mean, usually your big wigs do post game because that is such a big moment in terms of listenership. I can't say viewership because nobody's watching, but listeners. You're getting a whole bunch of listeners because people want to hear about after the game what happened, why they lost, or why, they want to hear some type of analysis. And so you get most of your listeners after, games. So the fact that we were only there, I think April is when we started, and then they asked us to do post game was really a big deal. It was a big deal for me, Glenn as well. And so, I'm just really glad that in such a short period of time, we were able to progress, and people were able to really just like what we do, to the point that they thought that we should do the post game.
One thing that we focus on here is authenticity. And you are so real. When my husband hears you on the radio, he's telling me they want to hear from her. She's so real. And you bring that realness to the radio with your voice. And I think that really plays a big role in why they are wanting you on everything, because it's you.
Yeah.
It is you. And that's what we celebrate here, the realness of you. And for you to be able to bring that to your audience, that's why they're wanting to hear from you all the time. And it is so exciting to see that, because more women need to know that they just need to be themselves.
Right, absolutely. And first of all, I appreciate your husband for acknowledging that, because I really do try to be my authentic self. I don't like to be anything different. The only thing is that sometimes I like to use a couple of curse words, and I can't do that on the radio for, FCC purposes. So, I got to keep it clean. But I can get my point across without the vulgarity, right? But I think it's important. I think that Baltimore, whether you consider, good, bad, or indifferent, however you view this city, it is a very authentic place. People are going to be who they are. They are not going to be anything different. You and I both know that. And I think that what's missing in a lot of sports media is people being themselves. They want to be what they think people want them to be. And I am not interested in that. And that was one thing that I told the program director, before we came to 1057, is that we're going to be ourselves. If that is going to be a problem, if you're going to try to change those things up, then maybe this is not the group that you want to be on your show. And that was what he wanted. He wanted the authenticity, and he loves the authenticity. And I think that that's important. And I think that that's why people gravitate to it. Some people don't like it, and I understand. Everything is not for everybody, So I can understand how sometimes I probably come off a little assertive, and I'm a woman, so that's another topic as well. Black woman. But ultimately, I think it's very important to, you can be who you are. I make jokes about sports all the time. I say funny things about sports, but I also am being honest about what I'm saying, and I think people receive that well. So that's really what it is that I've always wanted to do. Right.
Now, with all of the tools and the access that we have today, like you were saying, before you didn't have access to this and that. So for women today, with everything that we have, what would you suggest is a good path for them to take as far as getting into this space, so that we could see more women here? In a lot of different industries, we're wanting to see more women. Every time I see a different woman as a sports reporter, commentator, I'm excited about that, because it's changing, and it's the representation that matters. No matter what, black, white, and different, the representation of a woman on that camera, giving an analysis or commentating on a football field, is exciting for girls to see today. Yeah. So with all the access that we have, what would you say to women for them to get into this space? Because remember, we're helping people save time.
Absolutely.
Live better. So to save them some time, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to utilize all of the social media channels that you have. You have them. Use YouTube, use Twitter, use Facebook, because Facebook has lives. Instagram lives. Use everything that we have from a technology standpoint and get your content out there. I think that that's the biggest thing. The second thing I think that is very important is mentorship. And I think that it's important for women to try to help other women that are, coming up and doing things to help them navigate the parts that they don't know, right? And about how it is to be a woman in the business and how to get through, the people questioning your knowledge and the people because there's a lot of things that come with being a woman in sports that we do have to deal with. Sure. So I think that having a mentor helps as well. And so you want to do that. And then lastly, don't just pick one lane. I think too often you have people, women in particular, they say, I want to be on TV. I want to talk about sports on TV. Unfortunately, that's not going to always be the case. Everybody wants to be on TV. We're in a society now that everybody wants to be on TV. And I think that you have to find a way to expand the lanes that you want to be in. TV is great. And if that's your final destination, then absolutely, right? Continue to work on that. But there's nothing wrong with writing, sports writing. There's nothing wrong with podcasting. There's nothing wrong with, all of these other channels that still allows you to be in the arena. Right.
I mean, you're in the arena. You might not be in the ring that you want to be, but it doesn't mean that you can't walk down the aisle to get there. And so you still want to get yourself out there, your content out there. And sometimes you got to do it behind the scenes as opposed to being in the front. So those would be the things that I would suggest to do. Mentorship, using your social media channels, and just not being one-sided in terms of what it is that you want to do. I'm glad you brought that up, because in season 1, we had a guest, Carlina Tobin, who is a referee for WNBA. Oh. And her goal was to solely be in the league, but her path just was different, but she was open to it. So she's still in that arena per se. She's a good friend of mine, actually. Okay. Actually, so she's my aunt's goddaughter, actually, so we're family. But because she was open to doing that, she loves what she's doing today, and she's still in that arena. So I'm glad you brought that up. But as we talk about just being a woman, as just a woman, you have a son. Yeah. You were married. Yes. What is it like? Just as a woman per se, how do you balance it all? People always say, how do you balance everything? And for me, there really is no balance. You kind of got to figure out what works for you. Yes. You just have to figure it out. Yeah. I have 4 kids. I have no balance. But how do you do it? How do you navigate in this space as a woman? You're a mom. Yeah. Self-care is important to you. Yes. Decompressing is important to you. Saying no is important to you. As that ties into just womanhood itself, what could you tell our viewers about all of that? So I just want to preface by saying, I was a mother at 19 and I was a wife at 22. Mm-hmm. So I did all these things kind of early. So it wasn't until I was probably in my later 20s that I realized that this is something that I wanted to do. So, when I came to that decision, I talked to my husband, but I also had such a great village. My parents, his mom, and at the time his grandmother. I mean, they were all such great people to help us with our son. And that was really important because it allowed us to, do things because he had aspirations as well. He wanted to start his own trucking business. I wanted to do, the sports thing. And so having the village really allowed us to be able to, do other things in addition to, our marriage duties and our parental duties, right? So I agree with you. I don't know the answer to that. I think that you have to figure it out. It's one of those things I just think you got to figure out as you go along. If you feel like that there's an area that is being neglected,
then you have to compensate for that. If someone is telling you that they feel neglected, then you have to put in the work there, and I think, obviously there's the obvious of, well, I can't put all my eggs in this basket. Well, I can say put a schedule together. That don't work. Okay?
It doesn't work for me.
It really is something that you have to go as, you go along. And then if it's brought to your attention that this is being neglected, then you have to work on making sure that area is not being neglected. If you're realizing that your passion is being neglected, then you just find a little bit of time, extra time, maybe before you go to bed and when you wake up in the morning, to put it into your passion. But I really don't think that there's a right answer for that. I mean, like, that's a very nice, it sounds nice.
It sounds good.
But it's also very cliche to me. So, you got to do what's best for you. Each situation is very unique as a woman because we're so many things. We are lots of times a wife, a mother, a daughter, and that's another, thing as well. So I just think that you just have to know what exactly is being fed and what is being neglected and feed into that when it needs to.
So when you feel like you are neglecting you, when you recognize that, what does Syreeta do for herself? Because I know for me, if I feel like I'm neglecting Chanelle at the time, I may say, I'm going to a hotel for a night. My 5-year-old still sleeps in the bed with us. I just want some good sleep sometimes. And so I'll just go to a hotel with no TV from my husband, no noise whatsoever from my kids. So that allows me to just start to really take care of myself when I feel like I need to. So what would you say you do for you that some women may not be thinking about that they can implement in their life for self-care for themselves?
So self-care is really, it looks different depending on the level of self-care. So sometimes, I want to drink and I want to go to the bar, not get drunk, just have a nice martini.
I drink.
Yeah, I had to rephrase
I have 4
that.
kids.
Well, you might need a couple more than me. However, I just might want to get a drink, so I might go to the bar, and that's my self-care. I really do that a lot, by the way. Like, I like being by myself sometimes, so I mean, I'll do that. Or maybe self-care is, my boyfriend does not live here; he lives in another state, and I'll drive to New Jersey to go see him, and that's my self-care. If he's not available to come down, maybe we'll go to New York when I go up there, and that's my self-care. Or, there's me saying, I need more self-care, and so I'll book a trip or book a massage. It just comes in different variations based on the self-care that I need. And so I think that as women, it's very important to know what level of self-care you're on, and you mentioned like, well, I have kids. I want to just have a good night's sleep. So the level of self-care for you is just having sleep. And so, my level of self-care really is based on what it is that I'm going through at that moment. And so, I listen to myself very well. I don't ignore the signs. If something says that this is what you need to do, I don't try to be as impulsive. I'm getting better, y'all. I used to be very impulsive. But, as you get older, you kind of have to be a little bit more structured. So I listen to myself, and then I just act accordingly within the range.
Yeah, I think it is because we're getting older. You start listening to your body.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll say, I need to rest my body, but I also need to rest my brain.
Yep.
Because my brain is on overload. It's on the go. I'm thinking about this business and that business and what I'm going to cook for dinner, which I hate having to think about every single day.
Every day we got to figure out what
I hate having to think about stuff. So I need to relax my brain sometimes. Yes. And so that, like you said, it just depends on what you're going through at the time and what level of self-care that you need. So what are you looking forward to in 2023? And personally, in the sports world, what are you looking forward to?
I'm just looking forward to more opportunities to have my voice out there. Recently, I was on a show on Peacock, which is owned by NBC, Brother from Another, and it's usually Michael Smith and Michael Holley. But I think Jim Trotter, who writes for the NFL and works for NFL Network, was on there, and we talked about the situation in which the young man Damar Hamlin from the Bills and what happened to him on Monday Night Football, and that was a huge platform for me, and so I'm just looking forward to more opportunities like that. As women, yes, of course we see women in sports. It's not that they're that much of an anomaly like they used to, but obviously, there's still so much more room for us there. And so, I'm just looking forward to having the opportunity to have a voice and people looking forward to, what I have to say. Hopefully, that means that I also get to stay at 105.7 and continue, having my sports talk there. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to see what 2023 and beyond has for me, and I'm excited.
Good. Well, congratulations on being on that platform.
Thank
and
you.
I know so many people are rooting for you to be on as many platforms as you possibly can because of who you are, and your real authentic self is what people want to hear from. So in this moment, as we wrap up, in this particular moment, what would you say is women winning to you? What does that mean to you?
It's a lot of things, but honestly, just getting past the point of fear is winning. I think that that's the part that we don't acknowledge enough. A lot of times we're in our own way about whatever goals we want to achieve, and we're so scared about failure. We're so scared about what people think about us. We're so scared about, how this will affect, everything else we have going on, and oftentimes we don't take a leap of faith. And then especially in my position, being a woman in sports, my concern was, well, are people going to respect my opinion because I'm a woman, and all of these things. And I think that I think the winning starts with doing it.
Yeah.
Now, whether even if you don't succeed, you did it.
Yeah.
So many people have dreams and goals written on paper that they never pursue. And to me, that's the failure. The failure is not trying. Winning is absolutely doing what, just taking the leap and seeing if this is going to work. And we have to start applauding ourselves for those small wins, even if they're not the wins that you're looking for.
Exactly.
I want to, when I interned with the Ravens, my goal was I want to work at the Ravens. That was my ultimate goal at that time. And God gave me the opportunity to work at the Ravens. It was only for one season because that was around the time of the stock market crash. So a lot of people were losing their jobs, including people in the NFL. So I was a casualty of that. But guess what? God said, you said that that's what you wanted. I didn't say how long that's what you were going to be there. But it's an accomplishment that you can say, I actually did. I can put that on my resume. I can do that. And guess what? While I was disappointed in not being able to continue my time there, it was something much bigger for me.
That's right.
And so that's the part that I think that I will never, I was so disappointed back then. 15 years ago, I was so disappointed that it didn't transpire to be what I wanted it to be. But that's because it was not supposed to be. But I still did it. You know what I'm saying? And that's the part that I am most proud of for me. Just doing it.
Just doing it.
So I would say, as a woman winning, doing the things that you want to do, but you're afraid to take the next step is a win. And just keep pushing.
Well, we thank you so much for having this conversation with us. Not just a woman in sports, but a woman winning, as we would say, to help more women save time, live better. I know there are so many people that are going to be listening to you saying, I could do this. If she can do this, I can do this.
Absolutely.
I now believe I can be there now because I can be myself.
Yep.
That's the main thing that I think women are going to hear from you. I can just be myself. So, ladies and gentlemen, you follow her. Look, the NFL chick. She's on Instagram. She's very much on Twitter. 105.7 The Fan. I hear it all the time when I'm in the car. That's all my husband listens to is Sports Talk Radio. And I get on him. I say, they say the same stuff on everything, all day, every day. But to hear her voice, guys, it is just, it pulls you in. You want to hear more. And even if you're not the sports girl per se,
right,
you want to listen to her because of her just being real. And that's what we love so much. So thank you so much, Syreeta,
thank you
for being on our show today, because we just want to help more women save time and live better. So thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Well, sometimes we have to be okay with pivoting by taking time to really introspect and understand that we may have evolved and may need something new to fulfill us, just like Syreeta mentioned. Well, that's it for today's episode. Join us next time, and don't forget to like and share at W3 Community on social platforms and subscribe to our podcast, Women Winning Worldwide. I'm your host, Chanelle Burt, helping you save time and live better.